During times of hyperinflation, you might be wondering what it is that you have that you could sell that's actually worth a great sum of money, so you can buy those things that are now way too expensive technically in the money that you had to buy. So one of the things that might come to mind is property ownership, your land. But unfortunately, the only thing that you could really use that for in order to get money would be the food grown in it. And this is why.
That's right. In the German Weimar hyperinflationary period, 1922 to 1923, I think it's very instructional. I think it's best to look into the past to find out how we might be affected in the future. And I know there are people out there who think that their property or property ownership in and of itself is going to be enough to get them through hyperinflation. And like Alana said, it's good because you can grow a garden. And food is always good to be able to have because as the prices shoot up, you'll be able to grow your own food. That's a good part of property ownership. But after that, it becomes problematical. Let me give you an example. In 1914, a lower middle class family of four needed about 21 and a half marks in 1914 a week in order to make ends meet. And they spent about 47% on food, about 26% on housing, and about 28% on clothing. And when you think about housing being around a quarter of your expenditures, historically that's about right. And I know things got kind of out of whack when the housing was going crazy before the recession hit, but we'll talk about that too in a second. However, what happened when inflation started hitting Germany in January of 1920? Now, they weren't in hyperinflation yet. They were just in inflation. But now you needed 164 marks a week in order to have a lower class existence in Germany for a family of four. So he went from 21 and a half marks 6 years ago to now 164 marks. You need that just to make ends meet. A year later, in January of 1921, you now needed 218 marks to make ends meet a week. But it's interesting what happened. 64% of that money now was spent on food. About 32% was spent on clothing, and only 4% was now spent for housing, whether they own or they rented. What happened? The same thing that happened during this recession. People had homes that were worth $300,000, and virtually overnight, bam, you went down to $250,000. Did something happen to your house? No. It's just that loans are hard to get. They were hard to get then, and that forces down prices. It forces down rents. It forces down the amount of money people can spend to buy housing. And as the prices were rising, people needed the money to spend for food and clothing. And they only had what was left. And let's face it, in a market economy, if a lot of people don't have a lot of money to spend left, then landlords and people selling houses, you have to accept what people have, what they're willing to offer, what they're able to offer. And what we see here is real estate values went down dramatically. And it only continued. In July of 1922, they needed 1,232 marks a week just to make ends meet. And that was about 57% on food, about 42% on clothing, and now only 1% they had available for housing.
Wow.
Eventually, we got to a point in November 1923, which is when the hyperinflation in Weimar Germany really maxed out. Now you needed 14.4 billion marks a week, so you're a billionaire, just to support barely your family of four in a lower class lifestyle. And people were spending about 65% of that money for food. They were spending about 35% on clothing, and about a quarter of 1%. That's a quarter of 1% they had left to spend on housing for rent and or ownership of a house. So really, is ownership of real estate the total answer for being prepared for hyperinflation? No. You want to have some land so you can grow some crops. That's important. Other than that, don't count on your ownership of land to rent out to people that they'll be able to give you the money you need. History says it doesn't keep track with inflation or hyperinflation. So keep that in mind. What should you do? Gold and silver. Have it where you can get at it. Not in a safety deposit box, not in paper. Have it where you can get a hold of it. Junk silver is great, 1965 and before. Dimes, quarters, halves. Silver American Eagles are great too. And some people like silver rounds. Have it, use it. It will help you in a hyperinflationary scenario. And check out the link below for my blog, and you can read more about this and other articles which will be of interest. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Bye.